date is July 12th, 2012. The time is 6:04 p.m. Dora, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Cardwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Holloway?
Present.
Commissioner Kemper?
Here.
Commissioner Sterling?
Here.
And Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
All commissioners are present.
Thank you. And let's see, we'll have the audience also introduce themselves. And staff.
I'm Carol Wright, CFO for Clackamas River Water.
David Glover, right there.
Adam Bjornstad, engineering manager.
Bob Jordan, district engineer. Bill Schulenberg, customer.
Rob Kelly, water resources manager.
Bruce Fontaine, right there.
George Bain, Oklahoma Water District.
Warren Mitchell.
Nick Whalen.
Kevin Ransom.
Barry Johnson. Suzanne Lorenzo, water quality manager. Tracy Triplett, CRW.
Melissa Franklin, CRW.
Don Bunyard, CRW.
Laura Campbell, CRW.
Lee Morris, CRW.
Thank you. If you could join me, pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This isn't turned on. Nothing happening, no light. I got tripped over. No, no lights on, Stu. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to start off. Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, as long as you speak clearly and loudly into the mic, I can, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we're on agenda item number 2, election of officers. Do I have a motion on the table?
I nominate Ken McKeough for president.
Can I, okay, thank you. Any other nominations? Mike, can you hear Barbara?
I did. Did anybody second it?
Doesn't have to be second, mine.
Okay. Well, I would make a different motion.
Okay,
Well, my motion would be to leave officers in place as they are.
okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, Adora, can you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Cardwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Holloway?
No.
Commissioner Kemper?
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling?
No.
And Commissioner Kehoe.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Lee, did you ask me to move an agenda item up?
Yes, the reoccurring payments.
Okay. Carol? And that's number 4.
Yes.
Okay, this is agenda item 4. In the packets, you should have lists of those recurring payments. We have certain annual payments that exceed $50,000, which is the purchasing limit that has been authorized for the general manager by the board. This list includes some of our membership dues, it includes water purchases, it's the PERS contribution, and I would like to note that the dollar amount on the list includes the 6% that is paid by the employees, but we just calculated based on the amount that we forward to PERS. It includes our utilities, such as our PGE, which exceeds $50,000 a year. We've also included the district insurance. This is the general liability, the health insurance, including dental, and our workers' comp insurance. And we have included the bonded debt service, which is a payment that we make. We pay interest every 6 months, and we make a principal payment once a year per the terms of the bond agreement.
Mike, can you hear Carol?
I did hear a yes.
Okay, thank you.
We've also provided a list of contracts that were previously reviewed or approved by the board. This list includes landscaping, purchases of water treatment chemicals, materials inventory items, the meter reading services, legal services, and the IT backup services. That's the contract with Polar Systems for backing up all of our data. These are not necessarily over 50,000. And then we have other recurring payments that are annualized to be less than 50,000. So we've provided a list of those just for the board's information so you can see where the money is being spent. These are typically paid via a blanket PO, so we determine that we need to spend 40,000 this year on some particular item, and we'll create a blanket PO so that we don't have to recreate that administrative process every time an invoice comes in. We also have some month-to-month contracts and some IGAs. We've also added on this property taxes, which is a mandated item that we must pay. It's for the portion of this building that is being rented to our tenants. And then we provided a list of recurring invoices that are on awarded contracts that are less than 50,000. So we're trying to provide sufficient information so the board can kind of see where the money is going. What we're asking for the review and approval at this time would be the annualized payments that are over $50,000.
Commissioner Hall? Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First of all, on page 1 of 4,
Yes.
Principal Financial Group, Dental, AD&D, and LTD, and you have classified the authority for that as collective bargaining. It's my understanding that ATD is not provided by CRW to the represented employees and is only provided to a small subset of exempt employees.
That is true. That item, actually, when you provide a column kind of report, it's difficult to say what all these are. The dental insurance is the collective bargaining piece. The other piece is the AD&D and the long-term disability. The AD&D, accidental death and dismemberment, is provided to everyone, to all of the employees, but the long-term disability is applied to the non-represented staff. That is a small portion of that, but the payment that goes to Principal Financial Group is to all of those. But all of the insurance technically is covered under board policy, and that would be found under board policy 3.13.
Well, I guess since it's not under collective bargaining, why would you not have split it out and put it where it belongs? I don't understand.
This is a summary sheet, and certainly I'll make a note to do that next year.
Well, I think it should be set out now. It is, working from memory, it's about $5,000 a month.
It's $5,000 a year for the long-term disability.
A year? Oh, sorry, it's about $50,000 a month, something like that. Yeah.
The total payment to Principal Financial Group for dental, AD&D, and long-term disability is about $61,200 is what we've estimated. So the dental is the biggest piece of that. The long-term disability costs the district just right around $5,000 a year.
Okay, well, I think the list should be corrected. Second, relative to the Special Districts Association of Oregon General Liability Insurance, in light of Ms. Harbarger, who has arrived, in light of her reporting, or at least her editorial board's reference to her reporting, I think that we need to leave that out of the annual payment approval. We frankly have no idea what is going to be happening. That will not come up until December of this year. And obviously, in light of what has been so widely reported by the Oregonian, there are significant issues, and we are going as a board to have to take some very proactive and early steps we may find otherwise that we are simply without insurance, which is of course a violation of Oregon state law. So I think that we need to take that out. Now, are you focusing right now only on purchases that exceed $50,000?
That is what we're asking the board to approve this evening.
Okay, not any of the recurring payments, because I have comments about those as well.
Those are certainly open for discussion, however, because they are less than $50,000, then they don't require board authorization.
Well, let's see, now we've got page 1, which is 50,000 and over, and then we have page 2. So, I don't quite understand, you collected $3 million under one group and $500,000 under another group. What's were you simply subtotaling? I don't.
The second group is the awarded contracts. So these are all contracts that have been brought before the board at some previous time. We're just basically including them here as a reminder. These, we will be expending up to the contract amount on these items.
Okay, now, question, Crystal Greens, if we're talking about those as well. What is the expiration, what is the term of that contract?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Is it,
You received all of the contracts, you received all of the contracts.
I was addressing the question to Ms. White.
Well, I understand that, but you have a copy of all of the contracts.
I don't
Well,
have
I
that
don't
information
carry them
off
all
the
with
top of
me,
my head. I believe that it was a 2-year contract.
18 months.
18 months, so it's December of 2000.
December of what?
December of 2012, I believe.
Okay, then, one hopes that between July and December, we're not going to spend $75,000. So I don't.
I would anticipate that we would initiate another contract either with Crystal Greens or someone else. And when that contract comes up, because it is likely to be greater than 50,000, it will certainly be brought before the board. That's just the total annualized cost of landscaping as we currently know it.
So what you're asking us to do on this list then, I believe we had this conversation last year, is to simply approve payment, whatever it happens to be, of something on this list.
What we're looking for this evening is approval of page 1 of 4, which are the recurring annualized payments that exceed $50,000 that we don't technically have, we don't go to PGE and say, okay, we're going to write a contract with you this year
Oh, I
for this
understand.
amount. So that's the items that we're looking for board approval.
Okay, so
The awarded contracts are brought to the board individually, and the board has seen these contracts and will see any future contracts. So page 2 is simply an informational page.
Okay, well, when you talk about Phillips Law Office legal services, and you are estimating $12,000 a month, $154,000. As I understand it, the general manager's spending authority is $50,000. So,
We have a contract with Phillips Law Office
Yeah,
that the board has approved.
I understand that, but since the expenditure is anticipated to be over the general manager's spending authority, and it doesn't have, well, they're differently structured than landscaping contract. I am personally not comfortable. I would prefer to see the board paying much closer attention to those expenses. And so really what you're saying is you're asking for a vote on page 1, and all the rest of it is simply informational.
Correct.
Okay. Now, where does, or do all of the other contracts that the general manager has signed fall?
some of those contracts that you may have copies of are expired and are not included in the upcoming budget. And as new contracts come through the year, anything that exceeds 50,000 will be brought to the board prior to approval of the contract, and anything that is less than 50,000 will be brought to the board for their information at the next meeting.
Lee, you provide a contract walk too,
Yes.
in your management report,
There's
is that
one to bind
correct?
today.
Yeah, okay.
Well, actually, I think we can perhaps resolve a lot of these problems if, and I believe we're going to schedule a work session on the subject, although it wasn't mentioned here, I don't think.
It's on
For the
agenda.
for the board to address with staff financial reporting, and by way of information back to staff, the contracts log that is provided is completely worthless in terms of being a tracking document. It doesn't show the contract amount or the contract terms. It does not show how much has been expended and how much is still to be expended.
For the sake of
So,
time.
excuse me,
Well, no,
Commissioner, may I finish?
No, you know what, you've actually,
Cammy,
Pat, I'm going to
I'm
have to say
almost
something.
finished, and
Okay.
I would like to finish.
It's on the agenda, so we'll discuss that portion. It's on the agenda, and like you said, we're gonna have a work session on it. So for the sake of time, we need to move on. That's not a part of this discussion right now. So if you have something to discuss in regards to this agenda item, let's proceed.
This is definitely relative to this agenda item because it relates to the payment of all of these amounts.
And we're gonna
And
have a
so-
work session on it, and it's also on the agenda. It's number 10. Okay. Carol, I do have one question for you. And this is in regards to the line item detail that the budget committee and the board approved to include, or to have reporting, quarterly reporting. Have any of those charges from the line item detail, you are going over that later today? Because I want to know if any of them have changed in regards to these recurring payments.
No, I have a draft report format that I'm going to share with the
Okay.
board later this evening. It is based on the 2012-2013 budget, so it only has budgeted numbers in it. At this point, it does not have Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 expenditures, but we will be talking about that a little bit later.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions?
I still recommend that the insurance be left out of this list because it is definitely implicable at this point in time.
Lee, have you heard anything from SBAO that our insurance coverage is not in effect at the moment, or?
Our insurance company, our insurance coverage is in effect. What SDAO changed was the deductible in the insurance.
Okay.
According to the newspaper reports, which came either from SDAO or from one of you, not from me, the statement was that we were fortunate that we weren't thrown out of the SDAO insurance program. That makes me think, as a former very high-level insurance professional, that it is incumbent upon this board to pay some attention to that. We have no way of predicting, no way whatsoever of predicting what our costs are going to be. And so I don't think it makes any sense to include it here. We just don't know.
Well, certainly when we receive the renewal, if it is any different from this, that will definitely be brought.
And that's brought in December
In
or
December.
January?
In December, we should
And that's for the following
have a renewal.
coverage for the following
calendar year.
Exactly.
Well, we need to step back just a little bit on that, Commissioner, because the negotiations between staff and SDAO commenced in October last year. The full board was not informed of any of the outcome of that until December 8th, which was the last board meeting of the year. There was no opportunity of any sort to even consider a potential alternative. And so what I am saying is that rather than the board putting itself in the position of staff coming and saying, we have made a particular choice, and we can do whatever we want as long as it's no more than $187,500. The board needs to be actively involved in the entire discussion. The entire board needs to be involved in the entire discussion from the beginning all the way up through the payment. So I am not comfortable with, if you will, abdicating the board's responsibility for the insurance program to staff up to an amount of almost $200,000.
That's not the staff's responsibility. Lee, you can clarify if you want. This is just for the payment.
I guess
I mean, you were here and you voted for it in regards to the insurance policy and the changes. I mean, you were here.
Commissioner,
and
I didn't even get the full information about the changes
you
until
voted.
January 22nd.
Okay, well, you voted on it, and you
We
voted
had, that's not the
yes.
issue. I'm not talking about the current program. I'm talking about the coming year.
And it will be brought before the board.
May I add some
Not if we
clarification?
authorize the payment.
Staff did not negotiate with SDO prior to it coming before this board. I think if the board is reminded that we didn't even have the completed policy until after the fact. So, I mean, staff didn't know what SDO was bringing before this board. And essentially, the issue that SDAO called out was that the deductible was because of the behavior of the board. And that was why they put the higher deductible in. They made a presentation here, and that's what they said. So, and then the longevity credit had to do with the staff issue. And I believe that a couple of board members took issue with that. But staff did not negotiate the insurance policy with SDA.
Without going into detail, Mr. Moore, now that I have actually been allowed to see the redacted legal services invoices, it's quite clear from that information that there were a number of people involved in those negotiations. And I frankly,
No.
that was, it's not an issue for now. My issue now is that the insurance needs to be handled by the board. I'm not comfortable approving almost $200,000 to be spent at staff discretion. That's all I'm saying.
And
It's no more complicated
Is
than
this,
that.
is this payment for our current policy?
One of the other things is that the board policy, which is included in the general manager's contract, essentially gives that authority to the general manager. The board has delegated to the general manager's responsibility for the types of coverage that this board and this agency needs to have.
Mr. Moore, the board has delegated to you authority to spend $50,000 per contract. And this is significantly beyond that.
But if you look at my contract again, Ms. Holloway, you will see that it references those policies that the general manager is authorized by the board to carry out.
Well, and I think because
Those are only
it's over.
personnel policies.
No,
Mr.
it's
Moore.
not personnel policy, I beg to differ. And we will talk about that under item number 10. That's what that
Well, and
item is.
also it's over the amount, which is why it's presented for us. Carol and then Barbara.
I would just like to remind the board as well that last year when we were going through the insurance issue, the board was also reviewing our insurance agent of record. His term was ending at the same time, so that may have confused the process a little bit last year. Because we needed to renew his our insurance agent of record.
Please hold that, Barbara's next. Barbara.
I was wondering, Commissioner Holloway is concerned about negotiating our insurance. How much negotiating power do you have in buying insurance other than saying what coverage you need? And what deductibles you want on those coverages? I thought it was, they had set prices for certain things.
That isn't my concern or my issue tonight.
What did you
My-
mean by negotiating?
My concern, that's not a discussion for now. My concern is simply
Okay.
that we don't know as a board, and our insurance broker wrote a letter which came to all the board stating that staff had been negotiating with SDAO since October. That's Mr. Griffin's letter. So if you have an issue with Mr. Griffin, I suggest you take it up with him.
I don't have, I just was
No, no,
wondering
I
what
was
kind of
suggesting
negotiating
that
you're talking about.
No, all I'm saying, Commissioner, is that at least a part of the board got blindsided by this in December of last year. I do not want that to happen again.
Now, this payment is for this current calendar year, is that right, not for a new policy?
This is the payment that we anticipate for the bill that we would get in December of this year. So
For next year.
We paid, so it'll be for calendar year 2013. But we know that we'll be paying it through in the budget year 2012-13, that's why it's on the list.
Now, do we have to go through that process again in regards to insurance carriers, different insurance carriers?
We have an insurance agent of record currently, which is Jeff Griffith, and he will act on our behalf to ensure that we get the coverage that we need.
Okay, thank you. But is that going to be presented before the board, like last year?
Typically, Jeff does come
Jeff
and
does.
present to the board.
Okay.
But last year was too late.
That answers my questions, thank you. Commissioner Sterling?
It's my recommendation at this time that we take agenda item number 4 and set it aside so that it can be further discussed during what is to be agenda item number 10 to schedule a work session in which the board will be there in its entirety.
Madam President,
Yes.
Carol, does staff have a recommended motion? And if you do, would you read it, please?
Yes, the draft motion, I move to acknowledge recurring purchases for fiscal year 2012-2013 that exceed $50,000 per the attached list.
Yeah, I would so move.
So,
You can't take a motion on
I'll second it.
no. Okay. Any further discussion?
Again, I reiterate that this item 4 should be set aside until the full board meets in its opportunity to discuss this issue as well as the general manager.
You can make a motion to table.
I make a motion to table it at this time.
Is there a second?
Second?
Dora, can you call the vote on the table? This is to table Mike's motion.
Was to table the agenda item until the work session.
So now we have two
No,
motions on the table.
you
We
have-
have Mike's motion that Barbara seconded, and now we have a motion by Grafton Sterling to table the agenda item number 4, with a second by Commissioner Holloway. So there's two motions on the floor.
Yes.
You want me to vote on the tabled motion?
Please.
Okay. Commissioner Cardwell?
I want to make sure I heard it because I was breaking up a little. We're voting on the tabling motion, correct?
Correct.
My vote is no.
Commissioner Holloway?
Yes?
Commissioner Kemper?
No.
Commissioner Sterling?
Yes.
And Commissioner Kehoe?
No. Okay, so the reoccurring
Motion
invoices.
fails.
Oh, thank you, sorry. The reoccurring invoices were not part of the general manager goals. It's not part of the work session. We can include it for discussion at that time. If you have any changes you want to see for the upcoming year. I think Carol, in regards to, because I want to make sure these concerns are addressed and we take a look at them in the future, that the ones, especially SDAO, will be brought back before the board. We're going to see it, I mean, it is a contract over your authority, so it has to be brought back before the board. Well, no, unless we approve this, but I guess what I'm requesting is that it be presented back to the board. Presentation-wise, we know what the policy is, and we're gonna know what the payment is. Thank you. Okay. And, Commissioner Kemper?
You have a motion.
And I believe that certainly any time as we go along, if we question any of these, we can talk to staff about it and maybe make some adjustments if they're necessary.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
Carol's doing her quarterly
Right.
line item detail reporting, so if anything changes from these recurring invoices, we'll be alerted and we'll know. And then we have a copy of this, that we can keep handy for future meetings. And then Lee, you also do your contracts log.
Commissioner Kehoe, has a decision been made about the level of reporting that's going to be done? I don't recall that it has.
I'm referring to the line item detail that the board approved in regards to having reporting done quarterly.
The board has not approved that.
No, the board approved it at the last meeting when we approved the budget.
I do not recall that as being part of the motion, Commissioner.
I think maybe that was going to be further discussed by the board. The recommendation from staff was to do quarterly reporting.
Thank you.
And we're supposed to have a work session so that the full board has the opportunity to provide their input on what they would like to see by way of financial reporting.
And that's agenda item number 10. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Adora, could you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Cardwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Holloway?
No.
Commissioner Kemper?
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling?
No.
And Commissioner Kehoe?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, I will be leaving now.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Carol. Adam.
Are we going to refer back to your notes from June 14th, Adam?
Not, probably not.
Okay.
No. Unless it's a specific question. We're going back to agenda item 3, I believe. On the agenda, which is regarding the generator project. We'll be requesting approval of the PGE service upgrade and agreement. A short presentation, which pretty much mirrors the agenda write-ups.
Can you pull your mic closer, please?
Yes. Is that better?
It's better for me, and I've mentioned this for others.
As you know, the generator system study that Cunningham Engineering did back in 2010 and 11, they identified a number of electrical improvements that were required of the plant, as well as the generator project itself. One of the improvements was upgrading the incoming treatment plant power, the PGE service line to the plant. The primary metered system, which is what's out there right now, was recommended to be upgraded to a secondary metered system. The difference between the two of those, again, is that primary meter means that CRW maintains basically all of the power on the site, because the meter, the actual PGE meter is out in the street. In this case, the meter essentially would be moved further onto the property, and all those distribution lines come in with them by PGE, which has a lot of value both presently and futuristically. The big one being liability and maintenance of those lines goes to PGE, which is an entity that knows how to handle power. CRW, of course, with the water district, and a lot of that liability and responsibility would be transferred to PGE with this conversion. So it's utmost benefit in the long term. Also, from the NEC perspective, National Electric Code, converting to secondary metering would upgrade so that there's a service disconnect on these lines. Right now there's not, which is not in compliance with code. What will PGE do? And there was a letter that I included in Exhibit A. There were a few pages there. Actually, I think I attached that to this. So this is just a summary of that, of their proposal, which is to perform design and inspection of their work, electrical service upgrades. They'll basically be replacing the conductors, which are the power lines themselves, reusing a number of the existing power poles out there, and abandoning several others that aren't needed. A new transformer, which is part of the overall generator project, will be provided under this agreement. CRW, through the contractor, will install the transformer vault, and PGE will install the transformer. And then new metering, as I said, converting to a secondary meter service, where PGE is the maintainer.
And Adam, that vault will be located on our property or
Yes.
outside?
On our property. Yeah, I'll jump to the sketch. I think it's at the end, and we'll hopefully be able to see what that is. It's kind of it's a very small resolution. Results of the upgrade, once this happens, again, the main item really of benefit, among other things, is that maintenance, replacement, long-term replacement of equipment, safety and liability for the power lines and equipment coming into the plant, bringing power to the plant, will shift from CRW to PGE. Again, reiterating that PGE has the crews and equipment to maintain power service, high voltage power service. CRW doesn't, so that's a big benefit there. The costs that are associated with energy loss actually are currently under the primary system. What that means is that CRW is assessed a fee every year for the existing transformers that sit on our property for their ability to convert the energy down to low voltage. That'll change once the system is converted to secondary power. The transformer, of course, will be replaced, and that energy loss then will be absorbed by PGE, again, through ownership as opposed to CRW. So the savings there, about $600 a year. Again, updates to electrical service provided in NEC compliance. And then there is an estimated, because of the new power schedule, there's a difference between being charged under PG's primary metering scheme or schedule as opposed to secondary metering. So we estimate, based on the usage, which of course varies annually, an increase of about 2.5% on the normal power bill over the course of the year, which under, I think, last year's metering was about would be about $7,000 per year. So,
Is that fee essentially for their maintenance?
yes, really it comes down to the schedule that PGE uses to charge under that metering, under that secondary metering program.
Because they assume the liability and all that
Yes,
too?
yeah, it basically at a smaller cost, or a small increase to cost overall really is offset by reduced liability and planning for replacements of equipment and maintenance of equipment over time, which electrical equipment, like anything else, doesn't be maintained. So I just attached these. The next few pages are all part of Exhibit A in the handout in the agenda item. This is just a letter that came with the draft agreement from PGE, restating what they're providing there, and that's my chicken scratch. The initial number there changed. It was 52,000. This is just a confirmation of why it changed. Basically, the numbers that PGE used to calculate this agreement cost were based on estimated loads of the overall plant load, power load. With the generator project, those numbers were reworked somewhat and revised more accurately. So we asked PGE, can you rework your dollar figure and see if you have a saving, because our numbers are more revised as we refine design. As it turned out, they credited us about 6,000. That's what that number is there. So the actual check to PGE for this work then would be about 45,670 and change. So, and again, that dollar amount is for all those items that I mentioned earlier, for them to do the work. And this is the schematic. It's not mine, it's PGE, so you can't read it. I did provide a smaller version, or an 8.5 by 11 version, but the gist of it is the treatment plant is the grayed area here. Operations over here. Operations is actually served by a separate service, so this does not affect ops. The line of interest is coming from Water Avenue over here on the street and running, it's a green line on the drawing, running across. This is a very rough schematic, so it's the poles you see, the circles below that, the line doesn't go through them, but the wire is actually attached to the poles. Runs to this pole here, 72, I believe it is, and then under the new layout, the red dashed line would run, Commissioner Holloway's question, to the new transformer, which is right there, kind of on the corner of the grassy area between operations, shop, and the clear well. And that's consequently just adjacent to, or just east of, where the new generator will be placed. And then also through this, the line down to the low lift will be abandoned, and a couple of those poles will be taken over by PGE as well for a single line, a single new line. There's a couple poles which are listed on the drawing that PGE will essentially, and it'll take over maintenance and ownership of those poles. And again, that's because the majority of this service coming into the treatment plant to the transformer will be owned and maintained by PGE. So
And
that's
what was the reason for them taking over the lines coming from the low lift pump up?
That's a secondary feeder, a secondary power feeder down to the lower pump station. So it'll be
Oh.
under the same
Oh,
service scheme. Yeah.
thanks.
And I did provide a draft motion in the write-up. I neglected to put it there, but it's on page 2 of agenda item 3.
I have a question for you, Adam. You say it's not up to code having a primary meter. Is that not up to code having, if we have a generator? Or just right now it's not up to code?
Right now, because there's no service disconnect, and it would normally be, my laser pointer, so you can see the mouse. The existing transformers are kind of, well, they're about right here. So the feeder, the high voltage feeder line goes underground from this pole over. So normally, there would be a service disconnect or a big breaker essentially. There's not
So who's
right now.
maintaining it? Do we have PG come out and maintain it on our behalf and then pay them? Or do we have CRW staff that's been?
Typically this is all high voltage out here right now, 15,000 and 12,000 volts. So we would bring in the contractor to maintain it.
No, I
So
mean
we're-
currently with our primary meter.
We maintain it.
So
And we would have, for this work, we don't have qualified staff to work on this line. So we would have someone out the truck if we needed to work on that.
I guess the underlying question is, when it was installed, as it is installed at present, that was, the question is, was that a proper installation?
Yes.
So this is a grandfathered situation. However, because we're making changes, we must now fall under the new code.
Correct. It's an
Right.
opportunity time to do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
good, thanks.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. I move that the board approves the PGE line extension cost agreement to upgrade PGE's electrical service to the water treatment plant in the amount of $45,670.76 and authorizes the board president to sign the completed agreement to be effective July 12, 2012.
Second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Adora, can you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Holloway?
Yes.
Commissioner Kemper? Commissioner Kemper?
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling?
Yes.
And Commissioner Keyhoe?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
That's for you this
Good work.
We're on number 5, is that right? Thank you.
Item number 5 on the agenda is to discuss with the board the cost of service rate study. This is the rate study that the budget committee and the board of commissioners have asked staff to pursue. And what I'm presenting to the board this evening would be a request for a special procurement with FCS Group. We do have an exception.
She's public contract review board too.
Yeah,
It's
Oh,
halfway
it's
through.
halfway, okay. Oh, yeah, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and convene the local contract review board. Thank you.
So we do have exceptions and exemptions in the public contracting for contracts for personal services contracts that are less than $150,000, and this would qualify as that. What staff is required to do is to bring to the board reasons why we feel that that should be done. And essentially, FCS Group did perform the financial requirements rate analysis. And so they worked with our data in the time frame from January through April and worked with the rate committee and presented to the board. The cost of completing the full-blown study should be lower because of the work that they've already done on our behalf. They also, because of having loaded our data into their system, they should be able to do this much more quickly than if we brought somebody in from the start. I believe that we had been told that the full cost of service study would be $150,000 to $200,000, and if we continue on the work that FCS has already done for us, we should be able to come in around $100,000 or less.
I have a question for Lee. In regards to contracting, is this considered a contract, direct procurement where we don't have to go and receive other bids, or?
That's correct. We did go through competitive bidding to bring
Sorry, could you speak
FCS
up?
in initially. And so under the public contracting rules, because this would be a direct procurement, this is something that our contracting board and you all would have to approve. And then we have to comply with the findings afterward. We have to report back that in fact the assumptions that Ms. Bright just presented to you, we'd have to report back on the status of that at the end of the contracting period by state law.
Okay, and that's in the agenda packet. Thank you. Did you have a question, Commissioner Holland?
No.
And I have a question for you. When you say we went through competitive bidding, do you mean when we first did the rate increase?
Yeah, we put together an RFP, and that was how we arrived at the hiring of FCS.
We advertised in the Daily Journal of Commerce, and we also sent out to local known rate companies. When we did that RFP, we got 2 responses back. FCS was the low bidder at the time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holloway?
Yeah, I have, not a question, but a comment. When we signed the FCS contract for the, what do you call it, the revenue requirement study, as it turned out to be, attached to it was a scope of work, which was very broad. And I remember asking the question, because the contract stated that scope of work was attached, where the scope of work definition was. And the answer that I was given is that it was in this attachment from FCS. Now that, in fact, as I recall, was a full-blown rate study. And so what I would like to see here is, I'd like to see before anything is signed. I'm not comfortable granting authority right now to have the general manager negotiate that contract. What I would like to see, in light of what happened the last time, and I'm not faulting FCS in any way, I would like to see the proposed wording brought back to the board for our review so that we can be certain that this time we are in fact getting what we're expecting to get. I do believe they delivered what staff instructed them to deliver, but that is, they didn't deliver what was on that basically marketing piece that was attached to the contract. That's my point.
We were on a very, very short time frame with regard to the last, the analysis that they did. And it was a financial requirements analysis. And I believe that we ended up paying them about $25,000 to $28,000 for that. So certainly, based on the dollar amount, that was not going to be a full cost of service equity study. But we have had discussions with them to kind of come to this dollar amount that we're presenting today that assures us that that is what we will be, that's what we're requesting.
Well,
And certainly they were involved in conversations with not only the rate committee, but with the board, so they have an understanding.
I concur with your beliefs and your statements in regards to this particular group and studying the history of them and the information that they've been fed. I concur 100%.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, the contract that was signed the last time had a definition of service on it that was not delivered. I'm not faulting them because that wasn't what they were instructed to do. What I'm saying is, before any contract is signed here, I would like it to come back to the board so we can read it first, not after the fact. Because with that, given that history, and not having in fact an accurate scope of work attached to the contract last time, I think it's incumbent upon the board to have a look at that contract first. It certainly shouldn't delay anything, and it wouldn't be any big deal, certainly to distribute by email the proposed contract to the board. We can have a quick, even telephone special meeting if need be, but I'm not comfortable not seeing it ahead of time, particularly for $100,000.
Commissioner Kemper?
I don't really have a problem with that, if it can be done in appropriate time.
I guess I have a question for you, Lee, in regards to negotiating the contract. Is FCS going to, I don't know, be in any type of opposition to having that contract negotiated with you, brought back to the board, some changes perhaps, have you bring it back to FCS? I'm just wondering like how much time this is going to take to keep going back and forth over.
I do believe that we can sit down, because really it's incumbent upon us to, based upon the conversations that we had before with the board, there was a three-tier analysis that we had laid out as part of our discussion. They did tier 1. And what this particular scope of work involves is the additional 2 tiers. And I think it would be relatively easy for us to reduce that to writing, email it out to the board. Let the board look at what I hear Commissioner Holloway asking for is a review of the scope of work.
I'm asking for a review of the contract in its entirety, the draft proposed agreement.
So you would want to see the contract prior to it being implemented?
No, I want to see the contract prior to it being approved.
Well, that's what I meant, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So I guess my question is in regards to contracting, it's too bad Dean isn't here. I'm just wondering if we're going to fall outside of the bounds of contracting laws and rules if we're negotiating with FCS without approving or the contract review board authorizing to go ahead and.
No, we wouldn't.
Okay.
You know, basically we would tell them on the front end that everything that we have communicated with them is subject to review and approval of the board.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing, Commissioner, is that they did tier 1, but tier 1 was based on a subset of information, principally not much more than expenses. And so the sausage that comes out of the end of this particular process, so to speak, is going to be a methodology, excuse me, but it's going to be a methodology for arriving at a rate. And arriving at a rate includes a whole lot of information. So they will for sure have to revisit some of that information. And so, you know, we can certainly read, I think staff's got a pretty clear idea of what we want. And I expect that what they bring back to us is going to delineate all that. And, you know, then we can be comfortable. So on that, so at this point, I would move that the board authorize the general manager to develop a proposal with the FCS group for a cost of service rate study and rate model to be brought back to the board for review and approval. Is that fair?
Very fair, especially for the ratepayers.
Somebody want to second it?
Second?
Okay, so I don't have any opposition, or commissioners, I don't have any opposition to the motion that's on the table. I just want to make sure that we're not going to be in violation of special procurement for public contracting by going this route instead of already, kind of choosing FCS to go ahead and be the vendor for the type of service or the rate study that we're asking for.
In one respect, a direct procurement, direct negotiation gives you more latitude rather than less latitude. The only thing that one has to worry about is that if we bring the document back, we're assuming that we're staying within the $100,000 requirement. If the board were wanting to add additional elements to the contract that's outside of that scope, then it's very likely that the cost may exceed $100,000, but that's a bridge we can cross at that time.
And Commissioner, boards all around approve contracts. If vendors expect to bring the contracts to be approved, they don't expect to just be magically given them.
Well, it's a different type of procurement, so it's not like we're going out for proposals, which is why I want to make sure we're not violating anything by.
It wouldn't be any different. I mean, it's no different than the approval of the PGE contract.
Well, it is a little bit different, Commissioner Holloway, in the sense that the only thing the vendor wants to know is, are they negotiating with the general manager, or are they negotiating with the board?
Well,
We can make that clear by saying it's subject to the review and approval of the board.
Okay. Commissioner Kemper?
My main concern is that we address all the parameters that people believe have to be addressed and find out whether it can be done at that cost, and if not, what kind of adjustments to make.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I don't want any more of criticism of that contract after it's done, after we've all agreed on it. Okay? That's my concern, is that we all agree on what's going to be done and how.
Oh, yeah, that's really important.
Okay?
Dora, can you call the vote, please?
Could you read the motion back, please?
Thank you.
I have that Commissioner Holloway moved that the board authorize the general manager to develop a proposal with FCS for the cost of service rate study / model to be brought back to the board for approval.
That's fine.
Commissioner Holloway?
Yes.
Commissioner Kemper?
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling?
Yes.
And Commissioner Kehoe?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
And Dora, would you be kind enough to email that to us, since it's not written down here? That'd be great. And that should address your concern, Barbara, because we haven't put a price cap on it. So they can come back, they could even come back with a range of alternatives that we can choose from.
Well, if you go over a certain amount, then it's no longer a special procurement, isn't that correct?
Over 150.
Yeah, okay. Carol?
And there may not be money in the budget.
Well, actually, we do, we could get it from somewhere
Oh,
else.
yeah, sorry, Jordan Knight, local contract review board. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 6, financial reporting. We'll start with the accounts receivable aging. Our ending balance is greater than the balance as of April 30th, but the June billing tends to be a little higher than the April billing. And the AR balance is $217,639, greater than the balance 1 year ago. As you know, we did have a rate increase that was implemented for these bills. So the June billing was $221,000 greater than the June billing a year ago. A portion of that's attributable to the rate increase, but also looking at the consumption for the time period, our weather actually was a little bit better. I know June was like a record rain month, but we had some nice days interspersed in there in May and June. So we billed 46,189 units of water greater than we did for this time period a year ago. So the cash and investment position, we have not posted the June interest earnings for the local government investment pool. Our total in the bank, general checking and LGIP is $8,023,180. And of course, we don't have a billing cycle in May, so we draw down on our resources, and then when we start receiving cash for the June bills, then we start billing it back. So for our budget to actual, through the month of May, which is 91 and two-thirds% of the budget, our general fund revenue is at 78.74. So that is under, but again, we don't have water billing in May, we have it in June. So as of May 31st, we're 962,287 estimated for our revenue shortfall, but we anticipate through June being about 450,000 under our revenue for the year. And that's for total general fund revenue. The water revenue is at 81.10%, and estimated based on historical data, instead of the 91.67, we should be at about 85% now. And so we are still a bit under with a revenue shortfall of 253,000. After posting the June bills, it looks like we'll be, for water revenue, about 200,000 below budget. So the June water revenue was 1,110,000. And of course, I'm reporting here on May, but that's a bit of information that I have and thought you would be interested in. Also, the system development charges revenue through the month of May is at 40.14%, with a revenue shortfall from budget of about 112,000. And that's probably about where we're going to end the year.
Carol, can you tell me, since the bulk of our revenue is from water sales, and it looks like there's a $250,000 estimated shortfall difference between general fund revenue and water revenue, where's that $250,000?
We had significant dollars budgeted for revenue on the carbon study, and some of that money came in the prior year. So when we did the budget, we hadn't received it, and we had anticipated receiving it in July or August. We got some of it in May and June of last year, and we did not go back and change the budget, but that's where the lion's share of that difference is.
Now, I don't recall that we've received any carbon study revenue in 2012 at all. Is that
Yes, we have. I don't have the number for that line item right here, but we have received a little bit, and we anticipate, I think there's about 30,000 more revenue that will come in that will be in this fiscal year.
current fiscal year? Okay. So that $250,000 is carbon study?
Not all of it, but a significant portion of it. We've also had some other things that are lower. New services are lower than budgeted. We've actually had fewer insufficient funds checks that we charge a fee for. We've been doing really well with customers paying our bills. We've been doing much better than we have in the past, so that number is down.
But that's water revenue.
No, water revenue is just what we bill on the
Oh.
water bills, that comes in as a miscellaneous.
So the difference is that we anticipated service charges and things that we didn't in fact
Right.
make.
Right. So the general fund expenditures, through May 31st, we were at 81.77% of the budget. So we are on the expenditure side in the general fund, we're at 766,000 under budget. Not exactly sure where we're gonna end up because we do have some accruals. When you look at the personnel services at 88.5%, the June payrolls take us through everything but the last week of June, so we will have to accrue payroll. So these, numbers when we get to June will be adjusted. I will certainly be within budget, but we're not gonna have 766,000 extra available. And of course, anything we don't spend just stays in the general fund.
I sent an email to Mr. Moore, since he censors my email to you. I don't know if he passed it on or not. We, at our last board meeting, moved some money from material and service to personnel services for engineering. But according to my tracking, which comes from your financials, the plant was gonna be over by $100,000. So I never got an answer to that question. I appreciate having you.
Okay, I will address that now.
Thanks.
We asked for $100,000 to be moved to the personnel services because we were not spending as much money on CIP.
Right.
And when you think of CIP, you think it's all engineering, but it's not all engineering. We do have money, we had money budgeted for operations and for the water treatment plant, with the presumption that as we worked on the emergency generator project, that there would be some water treatment plant labor dollars going to that CIP project, as well as system operations guys, as other projects were being done in the district, that more of their dollars would go to CIP than they did. So when we moved that 100,000, it was to personnel services, but we actually moved it to water treatment plant or water resources and system operations.
Okay, so that was the answer to my question, because based on the information that I at least thought we had, if they were going to go over in engineering and in water resources, we were going to be in deep guacamole.
Right, and that's what you can see on agenda item 6C, page 405. You can see where we're getting kind of tight on some of these and not so much on the others. But so that's what we looked at when we did that transfer. But it was specifically CIP dollars that weren't being spent on internal labor.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how in the world, since engineering still had about, I said a huge amount of money, I forget, Mr. Moore has the email, that they had not yet spent. And so I was wondering what the heck was going on.
Well,
So
and
it's fine.
Yeah.
I just needed the answer to that question.
Engineering is spending maybe more time on the projects, particularly with the generator project, but the other departments where we estimated some costs going to CIP.
No, but their payroll costs are simply not going to be as much as anticipated for them.
Yes.
The slack will get taken up in water treatment. Thanks.
So additionally, we've got our CIP expenditures are at 33.95% of the budget. We've spent about $1 million on CIP projects through the end of May. So if we were at 91.67, that would be $2.7 million. So some of these costs are coming in a little slower than we anticipated. And again, by focusing so much of our CIP effort on the generator, it's precluded some of those other projects.
Sure. Now, I know that you have something like 90 days after year end to make the journal entries and do all that kind of stuff. And I believe that checks will be drawn in July that actually cover June expenses. When do you expect you're going to have some, pre-audit, pretty good idea for us how we actually did as of June 30th?
I will be reporting on June 30th transaction at the August meeting, but there still may be some journal entries to make. The August meeting comes early enough in the month that we still could get some invoices. We have, however, asked staff to talk to their vendors and request that they get their invoices in sooner rather than later. I believe it was last year, we were struggling a little bit to get that great big giant invoice from Water Environmental Services. And so we did get that and have to accrue it. But we're looking at every invoice and looking at when we receive the goods or the services. And if we receive the goods or services before June 30th, then those costs will be recorded to June.
Yeah, that'll be helpful, because last year we didn't get anything till October, and that's a long time.
I did report on June at the August meeting, and it was pretty close. We were not that far off. And in September, I will be reporting on our debt covenants, as I did last year.
Yeah, and I remember what we didn't get was July, August, or September until October. So I assume we're not going to have that happen again this year.
Well, I can maybe include it in the packet. I probably won't report on July at the September meeting, because so little really happens in June. So much of July gets posted back to June that there's little or nothing that happens in July. We will have payroll, you'll know what the payroll is.
But you will know at the August meeting how much what our water billings are for the August billing.
No. At the August meeting, no. We bill the end of August.
Oh, I'm sorry, right.
At the September
Okay.
meeting, you will.
Yeah.
I'll have that
Okay.
information for you.
But we will have expense information and all that, because we still have stuff going on.
Yes.
Okay, that'll help, thanks.
So here's the general fund comparison, year over year. And again, it's, the percentages are based on what the budget was, and so when the budget changes, then it's a little bit harder to tell, but you can see that our water sales through May are about 44,000 less than they were last year through May. And with the June billing, we actually will be exceeding last year's water sales. So now moving on, we did have 3 payrolls in the month of June, because our first payroll was at the very beginning of the month, and our last payroll in June was June 29th. As I stated before, we had 1 week of June that is our first July payroll. So we will have to do an accrual that's going to be about half of that payroll, push it back into the June timeframe. But we did have 3 payrolls in June. Last year, I believe 3 payrolls for July and December. So there are the 3 payrolls. And then our net accounts payable for June was $402,000. About $50,000 of that was CIP costs. So I have a motion here.
I have some
Oh, sorry,
questions.
you have a question?
Yeah, I have some questions on some of the checks.
Sure.
Page 8, or page 6 rather, the check listings, number 7690. What is the VIVA service group for HRA VIVA contribution of $20,000?
VIVA is a benefit that is provided to the employees. This was one of the items that we did as we changed our health insurance coverage and increased the deductibles. So $500 is put in an account for each employee every year. And this is money that, unlike a regular health savings plan that you have to use that year, this is money that employees can save and use during their retirement as well. It's become
Sounds like what Sunrise does.
It's become a pretty common
That's a good one.
mechanism, and as I said, when CRW brought it in, it was at a time when we were looking at huge increases in our health insurance costs.
So this way you can have a big deductible.
And to avoid those, we increased the deductible, but provided a little bit of cushion for the employees that might need it.
With benefits that they can use later on if they don't need it. It's great, thank you.
And, oh, I'm sorry.
I had a couple others. One, on page 2 is 7661 for conservation school assemblies. Are those the ones listed on this page here? $1,600 to Peter Gilbot? Or is that something in addition to these?
I don't know what that page is, but we have contracted with some kind of environmental performers to do conservation classes, assemblies at schools in our district.
So
that's part of our
are they
conservation
getting out,
program.
did they get out to quite a few of them during the?
I have a status for that in my management.
Oh, great, yeah, that's good. We had another one, but I can't find it, but it's not critical, those were the really ones I think that you.
I'm glad you asked that question, Barbara, because we've issued 4 to 5 checks now for that kind of thing. And I had it on my list to ask what it was, who's doing it, do we have a contract? You know, if we do, where is it? And how does that fit into our overall conservation plan? It was just new news to me.
I do know that the individual dollar amounts were relatively small. I believe we did purchase orders with the individuals that could do that service for us. And I do know it was in the conservation plan, but
But you can address it during your management report. Okay, thank you.
And Carol, could you tell me how that's categorized, so on my spreadsheet I can get it properly labeled?
we used to have a conservation line item, and we eliminated that when we created a conservation program. So within the conservation program, it would go to whatever that expense should be. So it's, I believe it's contract work. I think in conservation, you'll probably see it under either contract work or promotional items, but I believe it's contract work.
So it's coming out of the general fund,
Yes.
and it will be professional and contracted services?
Correct.
And it is it a contract or it's a?
I believe we found 3 or 4 different entities that were able to provide different kinds of programs for the schools.
I found the third one.
Oh, okay, good.
My third one was on page 1, the bottom of it, utility locate calls. We don't do those internally if we need utility locates.
We locate our water lines, but when we're getting ready to dig, we're required
Oh,
to
gotcha.
have everything else located.
Okay.
So the Northwest Natural, PGE if it's underground, sewer lines, all of that stuff.
Okay,
So
that's-
we use one call concepts on a regular basis.
All right, thank you. That's all.
I have a question. And I don't have the, hang on, I may have to check it out in front of me. It concerns, here we go. Our consultant under contract is Mr. Moore, Norm Day. He,
Is that in this list?
yes. And he, in June, was paid $3,750 and $4,750 for forensic work, and I'm wondering what that was.
The forensic work was related to the board's request to look at whether or not commissioners were operating within the course and scope of their responsibilities, and the attorney who is doing that work requested documents that needed to be delivered to the attorney for her review.
Okay, so this is in connection with the 3-person board vote to, rather than to provide Commissioner Grafton Sterling and me with legal defense cost in response to the Vance Boyle's Boley claim, those 3 commissioners ordered an investigation. And so that $7,000-8,000 now is a part of that on top of the attorney who's doing the investigation.
We have, what I see is $3,700.
The other
Well, there were
dollar
two
amount-
checks. There was one for $3,700, check 36612, and 36632 for $4,750.
The other one was not for forensic work. That
Oh,
was
what's the
other
other one?
IT consulting.
It was what?
Other IT consulting. You know,
Okay.
Systems engineering
Yeah.
that was separate from the forensic.
Okay, thank you.
Can you go on to, we're going to bother with the motion, so if you can just continue on with the line item detail report. Oh, yeah, the rest of your presentation, great.
So we had discussed with the board presenting additional financial reporting in a different format so that the board could more easily track the areas where money is being spent. And as you all remember, the famous green sheets that we provided during the budget will forever complement. But the green sheets that were provided during the budget process was grouped by our expenditure categories, but then had the line items within each of those categories to show where the dollars were. I've included in your packet a sample report that shows those categories and the amounts, but obviously we don't have any current expenditures, so there's nothing put in here. Again, we could do this more frequently than quarterly, but because the way check runs fall within the month, it would be a lot more of kind of a zigzag. This is after the AP check run started, with 5 pages of kind of all the line items. So it would be very zigzaggy if you looked at it on a monthly basis, where when you look at it quarter by quarter, it would be a little bit, it would flow a little bit better. But it does provide by our general ledger line items the dollars that we've spent. I can also, I can put together a report like this on the prior year budget to show you quarter by quarter what we spent at the next meeting.
Well, I was actually kind of surprised to see it, because it's been my understanding that the board is going to have a work session where we will lay out and agree upon the financial reporting that we want.
Just trying to be proactive to say kind of what can be made available to the board on a regular basis.
Well, I would think that if we get the same kind of reporting that Oak Lodge gets, which can just spin right out of the computers on a monthly basis, that it might be okay then to have this kind of quarterly report. But from my perspective, we're going to need a whole lot more detail. And I believe, I know that Oak Lodge uses another of the Tyler Systems software applications. I can't remember the name of it. And I'm sure that Jody Packnett would be, I'm sure that Eden, which I think is like the big sister of that system, has that capability and more. So I'm sure we could.
The systems are actually very different.
But they have
Tyler Technologies bought Eden. They were already operating the Encode system. They bought Eden. I used Encode when I worked for the city of Lake Oswego, and frankly, I really hoped that Eden would get closer and closer to Encode. But so they don't necessarily have the same capabilities. But I could certainly, if the board would like me to, I can certainly be ready to see what information is being provided.
No, because we've got the accounts, we've got the checks, et cetera. I know we have the information, and I don't know about the Eden consultants, but I do know, you can correct me if I'm off base here, George, that the consultants came in and helped Jody, I think, develop the reports.
Correct, yeah.
And if you're going to do that, one of the nice ones too, and it's a new one, is that every month they receive a report on their water use, and it shows how much of or their billing, I should say, and it shows how much is from base rate and how much is from consumption. And I think that's really valuable information. I know we can only do it by month because that's how we bill.
We actually could not produce a report like that because we charge the base rate and the consumption to the same general ledger account. That's the way the system was set up.
Can the system be changed? It would make sense. Otherwise, how are we going to know what the impact is of anything on consumption?
Well, my concern is that already, as we have this conversation that we're having right now, we're into Stoke Creek. You know, initially, we had a discussion about wanting to replicate the information that was on the green sheet and provide that on a quarterly basis to the board. And now we're talking about how the base rate is structured and placed together, which is different than what the board has directed us to do. I mean, Commissioner Holloway, we can do, as you know, anything the board asks us to do if we have the budget for it.
Well, I would just say in response that the board has not yet had its meeting. We haven't had a conversation about this. And the board, to my recollection, hasn't instructed staff in any way about any kind of reporting yet.
You asked for these green sheets to be presented
No, I didn't.
to the board. Yes, you did.
I asked-
You wanted them to be a part of the budget, and that wasn't approved. And
That's a
the
completely.
board approved for Carol to bring back the line item detail to the board, because it wasn't part of the budget. So damned if you do, damned if you don't.
With all due respect, Commissioner, that was I did want it included in the budget appropriations. And that was not a recommendation from the budget committee that was accepted by the majority of the board. And during that discussion, I do recall Ms. Drake saying that, well, she could provide that information, and we know she could because she already did. And she started recommending doing that on a quarterly basis. That certainly, in my view, was not a discussion substituting for what we had agreed, which was a board work session to lay out some of the kind of financial information.
No, that was general manager's goals. This is line item detail, which is Carol's responsibility to bring before the board. The general manager's goals are something that's different. Carol brought this forth so the board can have a discussion as to when we want to present it. Do you want it monthly? Do you want it quarterly?
Well, I will wait till we have that discussion, Commissioner.
Well, that's why it's on the agenda for discussion.
All right, well, on that, okay, if that's the case, if this is the substitution for the board work session on
This is not the
financial reporting.
substitution. The work
then-
session is for the general manager's goals. This is completely different.
Okay, well, I obviously misunderstood you. I understood that we had agreed that we would have a work session on financial reporting. On that basis, since Ms. Bright is here apparently to ask us for approval of this, I move that this issue be tabled and that the board have a work session to lay out what kind of financial reporting to the board is reasonable and workable from our Eden system as it exists. Now, if somebody wants to second that, I'd love it.
Second.
Any
Just
discussion?
state that again. No? Please.
Want me to? Okay, I move that, let's make it really simple. I move that the agenda item apparently requesting approval of this style of quarterly reporting be tabled until the board has had a work session to discuss and agree upon the financial reporting to the board. Is that
Give
clear
me a
enough?
second.
It's on the reporter if we really lose it.
I think the board already approved the green sheets, is that correct?
The green sheets.
Is that
are
correct,
included-
Lee?
They're included in, they will be included in the budget document. They won't be green, but that information is.
So
included
it's
in the
already
budget
set.
document.
No, Ken,
It's-
that's
But
the
that's different
budget,
than
this is
reporting.
monthly reporting.
I understand that, but these line item details that you've attached to agenda number 6, those are taken from the green sheets that you are bringing back to the board. I don't know why we need to have a further discussion, I just want the information. So quarterly to me is fine. If you guys want it monthly, I suggest you make the motion and have it monthly. All she's doing is she's presenting information, she's just bringing it back to the board. I don't really quite understand why you want a further discussion as to when she's going to bring it back.
Okay, well, let me
Why
start
you
over.
would want to table.
All right, I'll be happy to tell you. I do not believe that this board receives anywhere near enough financial information to allow the board to exercise its fiduciary responsibility in monitoring the revenue and expenditures of the organization. And that is not a new topic. I believe that the board should be receiving effectively the same level of information that Oak Lodge Water Board and Sunrise Water receive, which is much more detailed than this. And I had been operating under the understanding that the board was going to meet and have a discussion about that, because it is not a discussion for a meeting. It takes too long.
It's completely separate from these green sheets. All Carol's done is she's presented the green sheets that you actually included in your
Okay, so
motion
we're
during the
gonna-
budget committee.
Okay.
You're the one that added these.
Okay, now-
So I don't understand why you want to delay Carol bringing the financial information to us.
Oh.
It's line item detail, it's expenditures. What you're essentially saying is we're not getting the information, yet your motion is to delay the process of us getting the information.
Okay, Commissioner, let me try again. If, first of all, I don't believe that this level of information is detailed enough for the board in
You
general. No,
approved
excuse
it.
me, may I recommended it, I approved it, I voted for it as an allocation limit within the budget. That's what the budget committee recommended, and I voted for that as a part of the budget committee. Relative to the information that this board receives to allow the board to track the financial operations of Clackamas River Water, that is not a sufficient level of detail. Now, so, I mean, and, you know, Ms. Bright doesn't need an instruction from the board if she wants to generate this report for us. But I believe that the board needs to get together and have a serious discussion about the level of financial reporting that comes to the board. Now,
And
your
we are
view is.
going to, this is solely about the green sheets. That's what it says here,
Okay.
budget line item detail. That's all this is about, Pat. It
Okay,
has
so-
nothing else to do with the general manager's goals or any other type of financial reporting you want done. This is just, when do we want this information brought back to the board?
Okay, so let me be sure, since we're on audio and video, that what you're saying is that this is simply one piece and that the board will meet in a work session and discuss and lay out the financial reporting that the board wants from staff. Is that correct?
Whatever was on the summary of general manager's goals that the board approved to be discussed on that work session is what will be discussed at that work session. So do you have a copy of it?
So,
Do you have a copy of it?
I do.
Okay,
And
so is it on there?
The general manager's goals have not been defined yet.
No, they actually were
And-
defined, it was approved. It was approved when his performance evaluation was approved. There were items on there on what was going to be considered for the general manager's goals.
I
have
give
a
up,
copy.
I give up, Commissioner, I give up,
But we have a motion
No, I
Any
got
further discussion? This is, you know what, Carol, I just want the information of the green sheets brought back. So obviously, I don't think we're going to be able to come to any sort of consensus. I'm happy with quarterly. Since this isn't board directed, you can do it at any time. But I would just like the line item detail brought back. Thank you. Adora, can you call the vote? Oh, do you have anything to add? No. Adora, can you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Holloway,
What are we voting on?
do you want to table this agenda item related to the information?
Uh,
that's provided quarterly for the
I'll tell you
line
what.
item detail?
I will withdraw my motion if Commissioner Sterling will withdraw his second, because this board is clearly a long way from being in agreement on what it would like by way of financial information. How's that?
What subsequently is left then to vote on?
Nothing.
We've already had this discussion.
Yeah.
Let's just simply move on then.
Except that you haven't dealt with accounts payable and payroll.
We still have.
Carol jump past this.
No, that's because there's no motion on the table. Since there's no motion, I'm proceeding.
Okay.
Well, there was a motion up on the screen.
And no one made a motion, so
Well,
well.
No, I was going to.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
Go ahead.
Okay, I
No one
move
made
to
a
acknowledge
motion.
payroll in the gross amount of $307,235.55 and acknowledge that accounts paid of $402,076.69 for the month of June 2012.
I second the motion. Adora, can you call a vote, please?
Commissioner Holloway,
No.
Commissioner Kemper,
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling,
No,
Commissioner Kehoe,
Yes.
It's okay, staff gets paid anyhow, we don't have to approve it.
Well, just an acknowledgement. Okay, Lee.
The item that I have is agenda item 7. And at the last meeting, the board voted to release the 190 agreement. At that time, the board did not get all of the documents. I think each person had one hard copy, and I think there was a request by the board that there also be a red line version of the 190. That's in your packet. There was the board had not seen the white paper associated with the 190. That's in your packet. And there were 2 additional documents that I don't believe that the board saw, which was the press release that went out, as well as the frequently asked questions and the 6 facts documents. So now you should have all 6 of those documents in your packet. So it's really just a follow-up to the request, so that making sure that this board has all of the information that was sent out as a result of all of
Yeah, I actually found the press release in the Oregonian, but it appeared to come from Sunrise. I said, I found a press release from Sunrise in the Oregonian online relative to this. Well, actually, it was prior to our June 21 meeting.
Was it Sunrise?
Yeah. That's nice.
Okay, great.
The other piece of information is that both the general manager at Sunrise and myself, Wayne Hathorn, we met with Oregon City today, and the city manager, their acting engineering manager, and Mr. Collins, who is the general manager of the water treatment plant for Southport. We talked really about 3 different things. One, it was an introductory discussion on the ORS 190 document, which I just alluded to. We also talked about the need to process the withdrawals that CRW has been holding. I think there's somewhere between 600 to 1,000 of those. And we also talked about joint planning on the south side. We did not intend, nor was it, to have a meeting that was a decision meeting, but to merely lay out the issues as we saw them. There was some misinformation about the 190. We had an opportunity to clear up some of those, but more importantly, what we suggested that they do is take copies of the document that I handed to them today, and Wade and I handed to them, review those documents, and then we would schedule a follow-up meeting. So that's where we are. It was a productive meeting from where I was sitting, but more importantly, I think that they appreciated the fact that we were beginning to engage in a dialogue with them.
I have a question. You said you met with Oregon City. Did you meet South Fork Water Board or?
John Collins was there, representing South Fork, but there were no South Fork board members in the meeting.
You were meeting with who from the city of Oregon City?
The city manager, David Fraser, John Lewis, who's the acting engineering manager who took Nancy's place, at least on an interim basis. And then obviously John Collins.
Okay, thank you.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the conversation about the de-annexations?
Well, the de-annexations, what we've been done with those, at least we've not done, but we are prepared to have those discussions and have been for some time. And when we initially raised those, I think our engineering department has been was trying to chase Nancy down to sit down so that we could complete the process of processing those. In our conversation today, we again raised the issue of our need to get all of that cleaned up. And quite frankly, Mr. Frazier wanted a little bit of time to kind of schedule it in. We had it scheduled with Nancy, and then I think because of some things that they were doing with Blue Heron and some of those, it's kind of fell down in the priority list. But really our intent was to get it back on the list and to reschedule it.
Now, is there a financial implication for Oregon City in doing those de-annexations relative to any need to take over debt service or compensating us for transmission lines?
We talked about that, but it wasn't as it related to the withdrawals. It was more about as we began a more robust discussion about how we manage each other's network on the south end, whether or not CRW would be reimbursed. A couple of those lines we own jointly, and also I think the reservoir is at the pump on but that's not connected to the withdrawal.
And Bob, you probably know that a lot of these newer developments, they laid their own lines, Oregon City has, therefore they're not responsible for taking care of abandoned CRW lines.
Well, that's what we talked about is that part of the discussion will be many of the lines that we have on the south side. I think from Oregon City's point of view, are they worth taking over? You know, so
Exactly.
the issue then becomes, but because they do have some functionality, CRW may still be entitled to some kind of reimbursement, which was, I think, a refreshing part of that discussion, because I don't think Oregon City's ever acknowledged that.
So it's obviously there's a lot more to it than just on paper. I mean, it's going to be a process. Commissioner Sterling?
In regards to the proposed ORS 190, I put forth this motion. I move that all CRW action on the proposed ORS 190 agreement between Clackamas River Water and Sunrise Water Authority released to the public on June 21st, 2012, be halted. Second?
Oh, could you read that again?
I move that all CRW action on the proposed ORS 190 agreement between Clackamas River Water and Sunrise Water Authority released to the public on June 21st, 2012, be halted.
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion.
Thank you. Discussion then?
Dora, can you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Holloway?
Wait just a second. I do want to discuss it. My concern, as you all know, is that there is the stated intention that this agreement be signed before it goes to a judge for validation. And as everybody on the board knows, and anybody who was in our June 21st meeting knows, I agree with the South Fork attorney that there is no legal basis under the ORS 190 agreement, 190 statute for Sunrise to extend boundary protection to CRW or for a special district to, in perpetuity, make a grant of its water because of the ordinance that, or the statute that requires that a special district have the ability to withdraw its water for the needs of its domestic users. So I think that there are two fatal flaws in that agreement. And I am not at all confident, based on the wording of the agreement, which I've spent a lot of time reading, that should, when it goes before a court for validation, that should the court find that the boundary protection and the water or the water transfer are not objectives that can be achieved under the ORS 190 statute, that the rest of the agreement would be able to continue in force. And my concern with that is that at that point, Clackamas River Water would have transferred its water production into the 190. It would be there, so nothing would be achieved that CRW says it's trying to achieve, which is to get boundary protection. Instead, our water would have, the production would have been put into the 190, and we would have to buy it back as a wholesale customer. So, and even if that doesn't happen, the language is such in that contract that any CRW asset could be transferred into the 190 at a vote of 3 commissioners. And that includes, and the contract allows for this, that includes water rights, the plant, and everything. It does. And no, I know you disagree, Mr. Moore, but you know, I disagree with you.
Okay.
And I'm a commissioner and I'm entitled to disagree.
Well, I'm entitled to disagree too, because Pat, I helped write it, and there are people on the board that helped write it. You helped write it, and I guess if you're gonna look for the intent of the document, the first place you start is at what's the intent of the writers? And so, one of the provisions in that agreement, if we were to start at the top, says that if boundary protection is not forthcoming, that agreement is null and void.
Then, Mr. Moore, what is the purpose of going forward? Because there is no boundary protection provided in the law that states specifically that Sunrise Water Authority has the authority to grant water protection.
Well, if that is not going to be the case, we would not go forward.
Commissioner Kemper?
So it's...
Oh, I believe I've been recognized. You know, you're not an attorney and neither is Patricia Holloway. and neither are any of us, but it has been agreed that there's no provision in law that clearly states that this can happen. However, it is believed by certain people and other people who do have legal training that there is a possibility that this might occur. And in such case, it's worth a shot. Also, you know, it's clearly stated if it's not accepted by a judge, if it's not validated, the whole thing is null and void anyhow.
That's a
But
premise
but it is worth a shot.
that's a
for
premise
the
that is
boundary-
not
for the
correct.
It is worth a shot for the boundary protection.
Fine, I withdraw the motion. Subsequently to that, I provide at this time a different motion. I move that the Clackamas River Water Board of Commissioners make public
You have to wait
All-
until Commissioner Holloway withdraws for second.
Oh, sorry, I withdraw
I
myself.
thought I heard, excuse me,
I'm
thank you,
sorry.
Ms. Holloway. That's great. Continuing on for second motion, I move that the Clackamas River Water Board of Commissioners make public all records relating to the proposed ORS 190 agreement between Clackamas River Water and Sunrise Water Authority, released to the public on June 21st, 2012. Adora, should I repeat that again?
We've already done that by the action that we took at the last meeting.
No.
We released the information to the public.
Well, first of all,
That's-
can I second it and then we can have discussion?
Well,
Go ahead.
you might not need a second, because we might not need a motion.
Well, the motion's been made, I second it, now we can have discussion. No, the only material that was released is what we have sitting here on our desks.
That's all we did. I took part in those meetings, and that's, you
Are you-
have what I have.
Are you talking about all the comments by everybody
I'm
for the
talking about
last 2
the-
years that went into this, or what?
Ms. Kemper, I'm talking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that the ratepayers of CRW have had to pay for this document to be produced, which has no benefit for them whatsoever.
Can
Well,
you
this is-
prove
This-
that
this-
hundreds of thousands of dollars went into this?
Certainly, when Ms. Bright determines that she's going to take and produce the documents on a line item, it'll be right there in front of everyone.
All right, well, we already took the
It's your
action
opinion.
at the last meeting, and Barbara took part in those meetings, and so did I, and this is what I have.
Commissioner Holloway, did you second my motion?
I did.
We've had discussion?
Wait, I'm not done. We have legal fees, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that would, those meetings were held in, I would say in secret. Let's put it this way, they were unannounced, non-publicly noticed committee meetings. And to correct Mr. Moore, as to the statement that I had a hand in writing this document, what I did in 2 meetings was lay out a series of objections, which fortunately some of my corrections got into it, but the heart of the matter never got addressed. So I support Commissioner Sterling's motion. Whatever the documents are that exist relative to this, let them out, because it's pretty clear that if we proceed, it's going to court and all that stuff's gonna come out, and why should we spend $100,000 or whatever the amount of money is, taking something to court that, if Mr. Moore is fully correct, which I disagree with, it's gonna all be over anyhow. So why not let it out?
Mr. Morris,
I agree.
is there anything else besides these documents in
There
regards to the 190?
are concept papers that were in play prior to you and Commissioner Kemper. There were diagrams and discussions. Commissioner Holloway has copies of those diagrams and discussions and worksheets that went on. Matter of fact, the provision about the assets of CRW not being on the table came from Commissioner Holloway. And that's one of the things that's central to this agreement. And so, so I don't understand. I mean, just because you say something doesn't make it so, and that's just not correct. I mean, there are worksheets you know, but we have not spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash money putting this document together.
So you have no problem then making all the documents, including legal fees and other ancillary costs that have gone into this document, public. Is that correct, Mr. Moore?
Personally, I don't have a problem, but that's the decision for the board.
Excellent.
It's already public information. That's what I don't understand your motion. It's, anyone can make a public records request. The board already released the 190. All information pertaining to it.
Well, Commissioner, as you have reminded me on multiple occasions, I signed a confidentiality agreement about all that stuff.
And we released.
And that's what we released.
And
That's why
no.
we released it at the last meeting. We said it's no longer going to be confidential and it's now being released to the public.
Well, the agreement was released, but not all the records related to the agreement.
That's why you have all this other stuff that I just talked about today. I just said, here it is.
Just one quick question, Mr. Moore. Is it your position that that agreement, as it is structured, does not allow 3 members of the CRW board to transfer CRW real estate, bricks and mortar, water rights, et cetera?
I can appreciate the comment, Commissioner Holloway, but the motion that's before the
sorry.
board at this particular time is to make sure
Well,
that all public
I
records
moved to table the
are in
motion.
fact released.
I moved to table the motion because it's already been done. Dora, can you call the vote, please?
On the table motion,
Yes.
Commissioner Holloway,
No.
Commissioner Kemper,
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling,
No,
and Commissioner Keepa.
Yes.
Motion fails 2-2.
Can you call a vote on the original motion, please?
Commissioner Holloway,
Yes.
Commissioner Kemper,
No. I mean, they're already, it's sort of
Commissioner
stupid because they're already
Sterling?
public.
Commissioner Sterling,
yes.
Commissioner Kehoe.
No.
Motion fails 2-2.
Okay, let's move on. Lee?
I was still waiting for that question to be answered from Mr. Moore.
Could you repeat the question?
The question is it your allegation that the draft ORS 190 agreement, as it is presently structured, does not allow the transfer of CRW assets, be they bricks and mortar, real estate, or water rights, or anything else, to be transferred into the 190?
Any more than 3 votes of this board would transfer assets into the 190.
Okay, so you were agreeing with me that 3 votes of this board could transfer any CRW asset into the 190?
That's the way democracy works.
Okay, so I just wanted your confirmation of that. Thank you.
Commissioner Kemper?
And that is always, it has always been the history of this board and probably all boards. I don't know, could we annex to any other, well, sure. The board at one time agreed to go along with Rockwood with a PUD, 3 members, it only took 3 members. No, like anything, you know, they were going to sell the property that the plant was going to be on, the Portage Hugs. The board could have done it, 3 of them. That it is not just the 190 that is at stake, but you need to be sure that you have reasonable, sane people on your board. And I think that's the truth. You have to have sanity and decency.
Well,
And commissioners are responsible for the ratepayers.
But my question was,
These are going to be people who are just going to give things away.
my question was only related to the 190.
But-
That's the
but
only
I-
question I wanted answered,
clarifying,
and I
it's
got
not
that
just the
answer.
190.
I got that answer. That's
Lee?
the answer I wanted.
Do you have
That's for it.
anything else to
Yes.
present to the board? Thank
Yes.
you.
At the last meeting, there was some question as to, I think there was questions around the meter readers contract, and there was some concern about the ability to get meter readers to, there was an errors and omission provision on the duration of the contract, and I do have copies where meter readers has agreed to the correction. They acknowledged, as did we, that it was a mistake. And as a result, it's been initialed, and the document now reflects what we intended for it, what both parties intended for it.
And will you provide that, please, to us?
I have extra copies right here.
Great. And then my other question relative to that was, how did it happen that we had a gap in the contract? And how were you able to authorize payment with no contract in place?
Well, because under the Uniform Commercial Code is that when two entities when a contract expires, if both parties continue to operate mutually under the agreement, the contract is still in force.
Would you please send me that site?
It's under the Uniform Commercial Code.
Well, I'd appreciate
everybody seems to
it.
be
It's a very
aware
large
of it.
document. I appreciate you sending
Huh?
me, send me whatever you're relying on, please. Would you do that? Well, you're quoting it, so you must have it.
Well, you're
right?
questioning me, and I mean, the thing is, I'm a contracts professional, and that's what it is. And I'm sorry, Mr. Blair, if you don't agree with that. I mean, I ran
Okay,
state contract meetings.
can we stay on the agenda item, please? So do we have anything else?
That was on the agenda, and I would
Yeah, it
like
was on the
that
agenda.
site, please.
One of the things that you had asked for was an update on the activities under the conservation program. And so what I have is that Recycle-Man, which is the water conservation assemblies that we hold in the various schools that are out there, because the board had indicated when we pulled out of the CRWP that one of the components that it wanted to see continue was the education portion in the school systems. And so we have continued that. We had essentially 3 contractors that we used. One is Recycle-Man, the other one is Mad Science, and the third one is Where's Rosie. The reason that we have 3 is that Recycle-Man is for the upper grades, which is the K4 through K8. And in November, we had an assembly at Cascades Heights Charter School. 225 students attended. At Billquest Elementary School in April, grades K5, we had 405 students. At Redlands Elementary School in April, we did one session for grades 5 and 6. We had 120 students. We did another assembly of grades 1 through 4. We had 260 students. Under Mad Science at Beaver Creek Elementary School in March, we did one at grades 3 and 4, 130 students. Grades 5 and 6 at 140 students. Redland Elementary School, in May, we did grades 3 and 4 with 160 students. Where's Rosie in Beaver Creek Elementary School, grades 1 and 2, we did 120 students. In Redland Elementary School, grades 1 and 2, we did 165.
Where's Rosie the Puppet Show?
Yes.
I'm going to do a Where's the 190 Puppet Show?
Well, they'd send the act man after it. It would get the hook.
So that, I think that was a question that Commissioner Holloway had, and that's really what kind of activity.
And Commissioner Kemper.
And Commissioner Kemper. So back to the manager's report. We had probably we don't need to talk about it, the group of 8 meeting that has since passed, where we talked about putting together the documents that you have in your packet today. I did receive a contact from VCA. It was basically just an inquiry. It seems like dogs are in vogue, and and people seem to be spending a lot of money. I guess we ought to go into dog business. They were inquiring as to whether or not there was additional space, because they're doing their long-range planning, and they indicated that if that discussion was to go any further, that they would come back to me when I indicated to them that that's something that I would also have to talk to the board about, because it's really talking about this building here. and how we manage it.
Give up any more space, we're gonna have to move to the office building.
Well, it has been a nice revenue stream, though, in terms of being able to have that additional cash coming in.
They do take care of cats there too,
Yeah.
lots of cats.
I just see dogs all the time. I met with Tamsin Leachman. She is the attorney that I think someone had asked me about earlier, who's doing the special review on behalf of the board. And she had asked for additional records, and therefore we had to use Mr. Day in order to extract those records that she needed in order to do her review.
And,
I think those are the last documents, at least what she has said to me, that she needs in order to write the final report. And I think that has held up some other activities, so we have been kind of pushing her, trying to get her to get finished with this thing, so we can move on.
Did you give her access to the October 13, 2011 executive session? She had requested that.
Yes.
So she has had opportunity to listen to that?
She has had the the attorney-client part of that, she did not listen to any more than the district attorney did, and I think that's an item that's now further.
So you didn't let her listen to the entire recording?
I don't have the authority to let her listen to executive session. That's only something that the board can do.
So what you're stating at this time, Mr. Moore, is that you, Mr. Phelps, Kemper, Cardwell, and Keyhole redacted the criminal activity that occurred during the executive session of October 13th, 2011, on your own volition. You decided what it is that you wanted to and didn't want to give to the district attorney's office.
Activity, Commissioner Starling.
Just wanted to make sure.
We didn't redact.
It says right here that it was redacted.
Oh, wait, let's get back to my question. So Ms. Leachman had stated.
You know what, we are not allowed to discuss any portion of that investigation with Commissioner Starling and Commissioner Holloway, because it is a conflict. So, you aren't going to receive any answers.
Your choice, Commissioner.
Can you proceed, please?
The board also had directed me during the last meeting. We were talking about the CRWP, and the issue there was whether or not we would support Tigard joining the CRWP, because as a board we voted not to support that action. I met with Mr. Joe Kumarak from Lake Oswego and talked to him in advance of the meeting, explaining to him the board's position and also the vote, and he thanked me for that. In the subsequent Clackamas River meeting on July 9th, where the issue came up, both CRW and South Park abstained in that meeting from voting, and I shared with the rest of the board CRW's position as directed by this board, and we therefore voted no. We have I'll come back to the scheduling of the GM contract. There was a subpoena that was delivered to the organization by the Clackamas County DA. As Commissioner Kehoe has said, it was a complaint that was filed with them with specific reference to redaction. We provided the DA with that portion of the tape that they wanted. They didn't want the rest of the tape. They only wanted the portion that we provided them. So, and we were notified by the FBI that, well, they actually did not notify, they returned all of their investigative files to Clackamas River Water. Said they no longer had a need for those records. We have the meter readers thing, and we were also notified by the Ethics Commission that they had denied a complaint that was filed by a board member here against another commissioner. The last item that I have is the scheduling a work session with the GM in terms of goals and board policies. So that's an issue that's now before the board as to when we want to have that meeting. We have typically looked at, I believe it was the third week of the month or something.
Fourth Monday, I think.
Or something like that. So I'm kind of open as to when you want to do that, so we can have those discussions.
I'd like to go back just a bit to the conversation with Southwark, or with Oregon City rather. The South End agreement terminated in something like May 2010, I'm working from memory. And there are unanswered questions, as I believe, maybe Mr. George has information about it, as to who owns what at this point. And it's been outstanding a couple of years at this point. Can you tell us where we are on any of that?
Well, we have there's two South End agreements. One South End agreement is expired, it is no longer, and there is one South End agreement that's active, and then there's a HOPS agreement.
Okay, so you're referring to the HOPS. No, that doesn't end until 2028, if I'm working from memory. I'm talking about the first one. What?
For clarification, we have the HOP agreement, it's good for another 10 years at least. We have the South End Road agreement that was signed, I believe, in 2001. It's good for another 10 years. And then we had the I'll call it South Area Agreement that the old Claremont Water District in Oregon City signed. 2 years ago, it expired. And I believe during one of the board meetings or one of our work sessions, we went through those areas that we annexed and lost people. We went through quite a process of showing all the different areas. We talked about that agreement expiring. And they own, basically, Oregon City owns the area, it's inside Oregon City area, they own all those pipes. And I'd say, I'll make up a number, but a high percentage, 80 to 90% of the pipes in that area, Oregon City overbuilt the old Claremont system. And the reason being was old 1960s steel pipe. And when all the new subdivisions got built over there by Myers, yes, Myers Road. I'm trying to think of the little grade school over there. Anyway.
Holcomb?
Anyway, over by
Gaffney
Myers,
Lane.
Hagen's, that area over there.
Oh.
That area got annexed into Oregon City during the 90s. They overbuilt everything. When the agreement expired, there was nothing referenced in that agreement that was ours anymore. It was all being
So that's
supplied
gone.
for, so it's gone.
Okay. No,
So we
this-
have really two active agreements, South End Road and the HOP agreement.
I don't think I have a copy of the South End Road. I'd like to have, contract, I'd like to have that. That's one that's missing from my contract book. I have the one that expired and I have HOPS, all three of them. But I'd like to have that contract, please.
When you spoke with Oregon City, did you go over the rates?
No rates?
Yeah.
No, that wasn't
No,
the purpose of it. That wasn't
Well, I
the
didn't know if
purpose.
it came up at all.
No,
in
what we
regards
did
to-
talk about is the two agreements that Mr. George just referenced, and with the agreement that we would follow upon
All right, are you?
of. Oh, but to answer your question, I was contacted by Mr. Collins, because as you know, the kind of the ball is in his camp to get us those rates, proposed rates, so that we can evaluate those, and he has not completed his work on that
Okay.
for us to evaluate. So-
Thank you, that answers my question. Thank you. Does that complete your general manager's
Yes.
report? Thank you very much. Okay, so, Commissioner assignments, if you could please email me your preferred assignments. next month's agenda for approval. Work session. So just a copy of what the board approved in regards to the general manager's performance evaluation, which also approved the recommended goals for fiscal year 12-13. Rate study website, water supply agreements, IDA, contracts, financial reporting, boundary protection, and succession planning. So we need to set a work session to cover, I guess, as many of those topics as we can. And I'd like to remind everyone in regards to the general manager's contract, in order to be in compliance, those goals have to be approved by all parties. So we may not get everything in there that we want, but we do need to agree to something in order for it to be effective. Does anyone have any proposed dates?
July 23rd would be the fourth Monday.
I can't do Mondays.
Okay.
I prefer Thursdays.
I like Thursdays, thank you.
That would be
Fourth
the, that would be
Thursday.
the 26th, I think.
Should be okay for me.
26?
July 26th.
That would be the fourth Thursday.
The fourth Thursday would be good for me.
Okay, let's set it for the 26th. So what time? Can we do during the day or late afternoon, perhaps?
I can.
Can we do 3 o'clock?
Fine with me.
Okay.
3 o'clock?
3 o'clock, is that okay? Okay, public comment, Warren Mitchell.
He left.
Okay.
He's here.
David Blair.
With agenda item 8, I'll pass on.
Okay. Do you have a public comment? Okay. I know you came in late after I had this. Did you have a public comment?
Last one.
No. Or Cindy, where's Cindy? Did she leave as well?
No,
Oh, there
she's
you are.
there.
Okay. Cindy,
Mine was on that agenda items already, that's what,
did you want to speak on it?
no, they've already been dealt with.
Okay, I don't have anyone else. Okay.
And it isn't even 8:30?
I was thinking, the sunlight out there.
Goodbye well tonight.
Warren, did you still want to make a public comment?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
No, I have a public comment.
Oh, you do what? Oh, there, oh, good. Sorry.
Well, after I lived here a couple of months ago, I told you that I probably needed to get this place straightened out a little bit. I see by reading the front page of the Oregonian, that didn't really happen too well. I see issues here again. So, am I right that like 2 of the seats will be, or 3, those 3 seats are
These 3.
those 3. I heard Mr. Sterling say something about good for the ratepayers earlier tonight. So am I to understand too that when we're talking about the $3,700 for the person getting paperwork for a lawyer, that has to do with a commissioner against an employee type
That's
deal?
a bully complaint.
Yes, okay.
It's not a commissioner against an employee. It's the opposite. And an employee filed a bully claim against Clackamas River Water and against Commissioner Sterling and me as
That's
aiders
basically-
and
He
abettors.
obviously thought there was a problem. Correct?
We're not going to be commenting
Well, I
upon
didn't think you would.
the legal issues in
I
regards
didn't
to
think
it.
you
You can feel free to contact any employee in this entity and discuss any issue that it is that you wish to.
I don't know why, because I can come in here and get any piece of paper I want that's relevant to what I want on a financial thing. I really don't know what you're looking for, a needle in a haystack. But I got a suggestion. Since you got 3 seats going open, and you wanna do what's best for employees, why don't you guys, everybody give it up in November? Walk away.
Mr. May election.
May, walk away.
Mr. Johnson, is it? What's your first name? You didn't announce it.
I think you know, but you know who I am.
Well, I know your last name, I'm not sure of your first name, but if you don't want to tell me, that's fine, you don't have to. You may be able to provide an answer to one of my burning questions.
I thought you were gonna answer my
No,
question.
my,
Why we don't-
Public comment, no, public
I was
comment.
asking you
My
questions. I have the
question
floor.
is-
No,
I have
public
the floor.
comment is not for questions
Well-
Commissioner Holloway,
to the public.
I'm asking.
Commissioner Holloway,
Wanna
Mr.
be-
Johnson stated very clearly he has the capacity to take and find out any public record that he chooses to. And since he is an intelligent man, he's a business owner, he's a taxpayer here, hopefully he'll go to Sherry Hall's records and he'll take a look at the May 2011 election results. And then he'll have his answer as to how come you and I are sitting here.
Well, Mr. Sterling.
Well, no, that's not my question. My question is, to the best of the ratepayers in this town,
3 minutes are up.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, your
Well,
time is up.
it's not due to
they
his.
spend half my time arguing amongst each other.
Exactly. So,
So my question
Can you
is
two
to the
please
best of the
let-
ratepayers, because over the years, this never gets solved here. That's what I told you 2 months ago, I come year after year. And I think the problem is you'll get 3 new people to deal with you two. Or if it's the other way around, why don't you start with a clean slate for the first time? Or maybe Clackamas County, the BCC will come up here and maybe they'll fix it for us. Because you obviously don't really care. I think it would matter more if it's actually money out of your pocket. If you had to pay the bills,
We do pay the bills.
you're not paying the bills, we're paying the bills.
Live in the district too.
So are we.
Hmm?
But I
I
want
mean, we're not
That's
really
okay.
supposed to argue, we're just
No,
No, no,
giving
no,
testimony.
this is, no.
thank you.
No, but
No, no.
basically,
I have one
if you
more
have to pay,
comment.
if you had to pay the legal bills that you have created, we wouldn't be in this mess. The ratepayers are paying the legal bills.
Mr. Johnson, I have to tell you that I am paying my own legal bills. And so it's these commissioners suing me, and I'm having to pay my own legal bills. They are the ones who are
We are not
spending the
suing
ratepayer money.
you. We have not filed a
You
lawsuit
did.
against you.
You did, and it's still
No.
ongoing.
No, that's because you filed an appeal.
Well,
That's
so
what you
basically,
were
let's
doing.
get back to my original
Okay,
question.
okay,
My
so-
original
okay,
question,
you- the
why do
lawsuit
we
is-
not just
okay.
resign
Let's-
out in May?
let's make a
and
deal.
start
And
with
you are not-
5 new,
wait, no,
fresh
no.
people?
Mr. Johnson, let's make a deal. You give me a copy of the agreement you have with Clackamas River Water to supply you water.
Why do
That
I?
had to
Are
be,
you
no,
gonna cut him off
the
now
board
because
has
he
Well,
made
to-
you already
comment
went
on
over
the
and
board?
checked, you already sent your guy over to check me out, and I think that's kind of interesting.
you
that
are
someone that
located-
pays you
no.
$6,000 or $9,000 a billing cycle would actually go check out their
No, no,
customer.
no. All I'm trying to do as a
What do I-
fiscally
if I go and I
responsibility
turn on
board
a house,
member.
if I go get a house and I call these guys up to turn my meter on, I gotta have an agreement?
Mr. Johnson, our rules and regulations say that for us to provide water service extraterritorially, and as far as I am aware, both your business and Johnson City are extraterritorial to CRW. I simply asked Mr.
Madam President,
Moore
you're
for
completely
a
out of order.
copy of the
You're-
board
you're-
approval of that.
I'm
and
still
I have
waiting
not
for
been
my
able to get it.
answer.
Commissioner Holloway, you're out of order.
You're
So-
not supposed to be
If we're-
arguing with
If,
people.
no, I'm not
who
arguing. If
Let
Mr.
him
Moore
give his
can't,
testimony.
Commissioner Kemper, if Mr. Moore
Commissioner
can't answer the
Holloway, you're
question,
embarrassing yourself.
Mr. Johnson says he can get anything, so since
talk to
Mr.
him
Moore
another
hasn't
time.
delivered
Just ask her
it,
if I'm
would
gonna
you
do
do me a
190, she'll
favor
give you the
and get
190.
it?
I don't wanna listen
sounds
to
like we're
this.
done.
I wanna go
Isn't this over
home.
with, Keyhole?
This, well, no, I
I thought we were so far ahead of
I
the game.
have one more thing.
No, wait, I have one more question. question actually for Commissioner Holloway. If you're stating that you pay your own legal bills, then why are we paying for an investigator to cover the bully complaint against you in Grafton? You asked the board.
I have no
for
idea.
coverage.
All you have to do is listen to the unredacted October 13th, and your voice states it very clearly.
You asked us to provide you with legal coverage. for
Each
that
of us is
complaint.
paying our own bills, Commissioner. I'm paying mine. I don't know what Commissioner Sterling's
You're
doing, but
asking
I've had
for
to pay my
coverage.
own attorney.
But I'd like to make one more
Just
thing.
one more and then.
One more thing, so you can.
But I would get that agreement, Mr. Johnson,
need an
because
agreement.
Mr. Moore
I
has
don't
not
need
been
an
able
agreement
to
with you to
produce
buy
it.
water.
Okay, will you please let him make his comment?
Unless you're gonna produce to me every person in this city, every person in this county that owns a house has an agreement with you. I'm not gonna produce
You're
mine.
outside our territory. Well, I was just hoping you
Do
could
not-
use your
we-
wonderful
That was my
ability,
last question.
but
I
you
wanna tell you my
can't, so
last
I get, so,
Please be quiet
Well,
so
no,
he
he
can
said he-
provide his comment.
he said he can't provide it.
Commissioner Holloway,
That's fine.
you're out of line.
That's all I wanted to, only
Okay,
ask.
you're completely
That's
out of
it.
line. Can you
That's it.
please?
Your other comment that if 3 people can give away the bricks and mortar, like any board. That's why you've gotta have sane people on a board.
That's right.
And give you a prime example, the city of Gladstone, the commissioners, elected by the people, just like you guys, decided to build a $13 million library in the city of Gladstone without a vote of the people. So we went and got 2 ballot measures against them and we got it passed.
There you go. And you'll have 2 of them coming, facing you in November also too. And you as the voter and anybody else in here also too will have the opportunity to vote on the initiatives in November.
That's right.
You deserve it. The ratepayers of
That's right. So that's
CRW
what I'm
deserve
saying.
the option to take and vote on the initiatives.
And on
I'm
Commissioner.
So my question-
gonna state that
I'm
people
gonna-
just shouldn't drink the water.
Absolutely, Mr. Johnson. You're going to
What
be
did
able
you say?
to
I'm
demonstrate
just
that you're a
Well, that's
registered
what you
voter
were
and
saying, that
vote.
it should be good for the ratepayers.
That's
Because
absolutely
if you're gonna
correct.
spend $13 million more, we think we ought to have the right to it. But my question to you is if 3 are leaving, why don't we carve it a whole new slate?
3 are not leaving, Mr.
Well, or 3
Johnson.
are gonna get voted or whatever.
They're not going anywhere.
They're not going in.
Thank you.
I fully expect they'll be here until
So we can go home?
Yep.